All right, so the DPRK listing out its latest condition for any talks to begin, and that is that the United Nations Security Council must go back on the sanctions that it imposed unanimously on that country after its third nuclear test in February. Rory Rottenberg is our correspondent in Seoul. He's now joining us live. I don't know if the South side has reacted yet to this latest proposal, but it seems, at least on the face of it, a non-starter, doesn't it?
Indeed, there hasn't been a direct response. We heard those comments that you just broadcast as a general response, perhaps, but not a clear, a specific response to the policy statement issued by the DPRK. We've also seen some other comments emerging here. We understand that the South Korean foreign minister intends to travel both to China and Japan, perhaps as soon as by the end of this month, to calm some of the rhetoric. We've seen increased ongoing dialogue between South Korea, between the Republic of Korea and Washington. Of course, the South Korean president is due to go there in May, I believe on May 7th, meeting President Obama at the White House. So it seems, at least for the South Korean perspective, that the rhetoric is continuing and will continue and won't really, as you said, it will be a non-starter vis-a-vis the conditions laid out by the DPRK.
And the only evidence of any cooperation between the South and the North until a few days ago was the Kaesong Industrial Complex. There aren't too many South Korean workers left there. And now I believe a bunch of South Korean businessmen have been denied access to go to the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Do you know anything more about that, and what does this actually imply?
Indeed, and those South Korean workers there are still receiving electricity from the south. It's some 20 kilometers north of the Korean Divide. There's about 40 or 50,000 DPRK workers that were working in the Kaesong complex ever since it was built about 10 years ago. The DPRK stopped shuttling its workers to there and told the South Korean workers that they could leave whenever they wanted to. About 200 of them are still there. 8 more were expected to cross south today. It's unclear if that's happened yet or not. We were there on Wednesday. They crossed at about noon, and we saw 4 more of them returning home. The latest chess move in what is quickly becoming an internationally watched standoff. 4 more South Korean workers crossing into ROK customs, with their cars filled to the brim. After loading as many factory goods as they could, both in the car and on it, the men headed south, free to leave, but not to come back.
I'm hoping the environment there gets better, since everyone is concerned a lot. I hope there'll be no more worries.
Oh said the workers at Kaesong are being treated well. They're not threatened and able to communicate with their families. He spoke diplomatically. Another worker who came out preferred to say nothing at all. The Pyongyang sudden withdrawal of DPRK workers from the South Korean factories has prompted an angry response from the business association representing them.
We businessmen made the Kaesong complex of today with sweat and blood, trusting the promises of the highest leaders from the North and South, who guaranteed our business for 50 years. It's a disaster and pity for us that we are unable to go into our own factories.
These cars have just been loaded up with goods destined for the South Korean workers inside the Kaesong Industrial Complex. You can see some of the goods that have been put into the back of these vehicles. The Business Association is hoping to get right across this checkpoint. This is the customs area. The complex is some 20 kilometers away. That decision right now sits with DPRK officials. The Kaesong complex was built more than a decade ago as a model of cooperation between the two sides. The goods, like the factory owners, would be South Korean, but the majority of workers would be from the DPRK, generating millions for the North's economy. The 123 Kaesong factories had been operating since at full capacity, until last week. On Wednesday, Pyongyang rejected the association's appeal, reaffirming its position that, at this moment, anyone in Kaesong could come out, but no one would be allowed in. For now, this is a one-way road, and as long as the tension remains, that's likely to as well.
And the association, they're telling us that they've invested millions of dollars into building that complex some decade ago, and now that they're actually incurring debts, that's because a lot of the garments, the products there belong to clients in the South and internationally that have already purchased it. So they're saying this is a really big problem for them. They want it resolved urgently. Zaka, back to you.
And Roy, I know that predicting where the story is going to move over the next few days, particularly when it involves the DPRK, is a slightly risky